members of the public, and along with Denise Piper from the NZME. It's always good to see you there as well. Today is the 18th of June, and it's gone on 11 o'clock, so we will start the meeting. Again, I will start it with a word of prayer. Again, if everyone would like to bow their heads, they're more than welcome to. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you, Lord, for today. Thank you for the guidance and the mercy and the strength that you're providing to the elected members as we go through the deliberations today. Lord, we also ask you to look after those who are at the hospital and those who are in situations where there is a shortage of doctors and nurses at the present moment. As many of us have heard the situations that they're under, we know the stresses that are happening around Northland and around our community. Lord, as the deliberations go through today, may you look up and help us to listen to each other, to understand each other, and be respectful for one another. In your most precious and loving name, amen. Councillors and members of the public, I just remind you again, any declarations of interest, please make them known. Again, for those who are supportive of things which are being said, please use the sign language one of raising your hands like this. If you do not agree, the thumbs down. Again, just reminding people of the noise vibrations that go through the system. The meeting is being live streamed. At this present moment, we have a request for a Teams link, which has come from Councillor Benny. However, he is in a situation where he may not be able to Teams in. He is presently dealing with personal issues. And also we've got an apology from Councillor Cooper at this present moment. So I've had no other apologies sent to me at this present moment, and I know Councillor Peters is here somewhere. She hasn't turned up into the room yet. I will remind the team to maybe send a message through to those other councillors who haven't mentioned. So at the moment, we just have apologies from Councillor Cooper as for sickness, and Councillor Benny for being possibly late. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Connop, you're moving. Councillor Harding, you're seconding. Excellent. And Councillor Peters is just turning up. Thank you, Councillor Peters. All those in favour? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you, councillors. Councillors, it has been highlighted to me, and we do need to make this quite clear. We've had a email come in from the Northland Chamber of Commerce, and they felt as though we were not representing them clearly. So I have to make sure it quite clearly understood that we did understand their interpretation of what was being written. And just to make it very clear, they did not submit on anything in relation to capital gains benefits for business zone landowners. They were very specifically referring to the temporary relief farmed business zone land within their submission. Again, that is just to clarify the situation from the Northland Chamber of Commerce, and I appreciate receiving an email and talking to Tim Robinson about that afterwards. We have sent out several bits of information over the last 3 weeks. You have got your original agenda, you've got the supplementary agenda, and also you've got additional information which has been sent out in relation to concerns last night, and highlighting that one of the issues there was again with Tim Robinson, so we did highlight that in the agenda, or the items that you had. We are resuming council on the previous meeting. And Councillor Jovich, it's good to see you here too as well. So we're resuming meeting of the previous meeting, and at this present moment we have an amendment which is coming up, and I believe that is from Councillor Reid, and you would like to read your amendment.
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. I would stand, but due to the length of it, I fear that I'll faint before I get to the end of it, so I'll remain seated, if you wouldn't mind. The amendment is that the Council, 1, revokes the decisions made at the 5th of June 2025 deliberations meeting on the 2025-26 annual plan and fees and charges, and notes the additional information provided to this meeting and the meeting on 10th of June 2025. 2. Notes and considers the 792 formal submissions received on the draft 2025-26 annual plan and the draft 2025-26 fees and charges consultations. The basis for setting rates. Number 3, acknowledges that the draft 2025-26 annual plan included a 10.7% general rates increase aligned with the financial strategy set out in the 2024-34 long-term plan to achieve everyday funding by year 4. Number 4, acknowledges community feedback during the consultation that a 10.7% general rates increase is unaffordable for some ratepayers, and that adding a new stormwater targeted rate further worsens affordability concerns. 5. Notes that rate increases in the draft annual plan aim to restore Council's everyday balanced budget under the LTP. These increases include funding any operating costs linked to central government priority capital projects, which, despite partial government funding, add pressure on Council resources. 6. Notes that other increases in water and wastewater rates are in part driven by central government regulatory levies proposed by the Local Waters Done Well reforms, which currently remain uncertain as further legislation has been signalled by central government. 7. Notes that a significant drop in the proposed general rates increase of 10.7 for 2025-26 could trigger an amendment to the 2024-34 long-term plan and or a reconsultation of the 25-26 annual plan, as this may differ significantly from the parameters set out within the financial strategy, including impacts on balanced budget, everyday funding, debt levels, and potential changes in service levels. 8. That the revenue from the proposed district-wide universal targeted stormwater rate is required to be ring-fenced, as per direction from central government as was signalled in the 2024-34 LTP. 9. Notes that growth will be allowed for in expected revenue from rates as per the financial strategy of the 2024-34 LTP. This budget assumption is to account for growth in new rateable properties and allows for an additional 1.3% for general rates and stormwater and 1% for water and wastewater connections. Decisions regarding setting rates for 2025-26. Number 10, and this is the one, approves an increase in general rates of 9.7% for the 2025-26 annual plan, reduced from 10.7% increase in the 2025-26 draft annual plan, with a corresponding reduction in operating budgets to the same value, recognising the tough economic environment and the consequential financial hardships being faced by many ratepayers. 11. Approves the introduction of a district-wide universal stormwater targeted rate of $79, including GST, per separately used or inhabited parts of a rating unit, commonly known as a SUIP, for the 2025-26 annual plan, reduced from $172 in the 25-26 annual plan consultation document, option 2. 12. Notes that the stormwater targeted rate will fund the operational expenditure and renewals for the stormwater activity for 2025-26, while growth and level of service capital expenditure will be debt funded. Please turn over. 13. Notes that a combination of reduced NZTA funding, timing of capital grants paid to external parties, and the reduced stormwater targeted rate will result in Council not achieving the balanced budget benchmark as determined by financial prudence regulations for the 2025-26 annual plan. Number 14, approves setting the uniform annual general charge at $901, including GST, per separately used or inhabited parts, SUIP, of a rating unit for the 2025-26 annual plan. 15, declines to proceed with the proposed temporary rates relief for farmed business zoned land consulted on in the draft 2025-26 annual plan, as per direction from public consultation on question 3 of the annual plan consultation document. 16, approves the following targeted rate increases for the 25-26, which includes provision for increased central government imposed levies, some of which will fund the regulatory functions of the Commerce Commission and the Water Services Authority, and higher than expected costs as set out in the 2025-26 annual plan consultation document. A, water rates of 5.7, local government cost index, LGCI, plus 2.5%, as per 2024-34 LTP. 1, additional $15 including GST to the water supply charge per SUIP, to which water is supplied. The availability water rate per SUIP to which water is available to be supplied, and the unmetered water rate per SUIP to which water is supplied to fund central government imposed levies. 2, increased backflow preventer rates to recover higher than expected cost increases. Part B, wastewater rates of 3.2% LGCI, and additional $8 including GST per residential SUIP connected to the wastewater system, and an additional $5 including GST per PAN for non-residential rating units connected to the wastewater system to fund government-imposed levies. C, flood protection rates for Whangarei Flood Protection Scheme of 3.2% LGCI as per the 2024-34 LTP. 17, notes that staff will engage with the incoming council and will recommend a rates review concurrent with the 27-37 long-term plan. Requests for funding. Notes that the submissions requesting $3.5 million in council support in 2025-26 towards the build of an indoor sports facility as part of Stage 2 of the Ruakaka Recreation Centre development, and direct staff to include the request for consideration as part of the 27-37 LTP. 19, notes the request from Glenbervie School for an unspecified amount of funding in 2025-26 for a road safety barrier next to the school. A, direct staff to continue to engage with school and Ministry of Education, with a joint plan to be agreed and presented to the WDC Infrastructure Committee at the August meeting, subject to Ministry of Education approvals. B, notes that implementation will be considered as part of the high-risk rural roads safety improvements budget for this corridor. 20, approves funding for the footpath in King Street, Whangarei, on the western side of the main road from the 4 Square to Union Street, through the elected member community projects budget. That should have CapEx projects budget. A, notes an engineer's estimate of $750 to $950K has been provided by staff, and this expenditure will be capital expenditure. B, direct staff to develop a procurement plan to be approved at the July 2025 Infrastructure Committee. The procurement plan should encourage local contractors and drive cost-effective methods for managing the known risks. C, direct staff to bring the recommendation for contract award to the Infrastructure Committee for endorsement. D, direct staff to bring the formal allocation of budget to the following full council meeting for approval. 21, approves a payment arrangement for the property ID 165276 at 551 Marsden Point Road, deferring the payment of $150,000 of land rates for each of the 2025-26 and 2026-27 rating years to 20 August 2027, when all deferred amounts will be payable in full. Fees and charges. 22. Approves the increase to the 2025-26 fees and charges as detailed within the Statement of Proposal. Annual Plan Preparation. 23. Approves the preparation of the final 2025-26 fees and charges and the 2025-26 Annual Plan, and scheduled for presentation for adoption on 26th of June 2025 and 2nd July 2025 meeting of Council respectively. 24. Direct staff to develop an action plan for improving and simplifying the 2026-27 annual planning process and to focus on efficiency gains and value for money to reduce the cost burden for the ratepayer, and to report back to Council in September 2025. There endeth the lesson, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor Reid, and I did notice that you added a word onto that, which was the CapEx side of things.
Yeah. Just keeping the I's dotted and the T's crossed, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. And Councillor, apologies, it looks like you cannot second it, but Councillor Coniper is going to second it. The team have said that you, because you moved the amendment at the last meeting, you weren't able to second this one. Still means you can speak to this because this is a completely new amendment. Okay. Councillor Reid, it's been seconded. Would you like to speak to it now?
Absolutely. My congratulations to my fellow members in the chamber. Pretty sterling effort on your behalf to stand up and be counted. We all heard our ratepayers, and I don't recall hearing one who was happy. And that's a bit of an indictment on how things have been done. So, they are going to change. Councillor Hoss and myself have spent the better part of 2 days working on this, and to frame up to come in with item number 24 on that agenda has taken an awful lot of work. So full kudos to my friend Councillor Hoss. Just like to outline a couple of things that we have changed this term. So we are working for our ratepayers. We are hearing. We are doing. We've changed the road maintenance contracts. We've changed the management of the road maintenance contracts. We've done a lot of work on urban flooding. There's more to come. Wastewater, more investment. Probably one of our biggest projects ever is underway at Ruakaka. Drinking water, Pority treatment plant upgrade, reservoir expansion in Kamo, line upgrades all over town and plus new lines. Work on flood management for the city, for Hikarangi. Resilience for our roading network and the community in general. Still more work to do. Hence, I want to be back next term to help with that. To come to point 24, we've now set a bar. I've got some documentation here that Councillor Holson and I have been working on. We started with a very basic idea and we've fleshed it out. We've put it before His Worship and the CE, who've taken it on board, and I feel it has been watered down somewhat to point 24. We have set the ground rules, and we will continue to follow through with the new council. We need to listen to our residents, and we need to deliver the money they give us via rates in a better and more timely and more efficient manner. Our program for infrastructure is going pretty good, and we will continue to grow that. We recognise our community with development grants and pretty much assistance to maintain the work that they do. We're spending a lot of money, and there's a lot of money planned to be spent. So some of that's through borrowing, but once we've got through the borrowing and the doing, then we have to maintain it. So we need to make sure that when we do something with our CapEx, we do it well enough to lessen our OpEx incursion later on. And I think, Your Worship, that kind of pretty much sums it up for me today. And once again, just thank you for staff taking on board councillors' concerns, and thank you to the councillors for taking on the ratepayers' concerns. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Reid, and your support out there in the community. I just want to clarify, you've broken it up in this way so that it can be taken in parts, is that correct?
I think we're on. Yes, Your Worship, that is correct.
And those headings are the parts?
Yep, it will be under 1 and 2, and then the basis for setting rates, you'll see that either acknowledging or noting. Yep. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 and 16, 17 can all go as one.
Yep.
Requests for funding from 18 to 21 can go as one. Fees and charges on its own, and the annual plan preparation areas on their own. Thank you.
Thank you for your clarification. Councillor Holmes.
Your Worship, just a question, if I may, please. Just to clarify whether I heard correctly from Councillor Reid, that you mentioned that there was an outline of a plan that you and Councillor Hulse had developed and had run past His Worship and the CEO. If I heard that correctly, the question is, when does the rest of the council get to see that, please? Because that's not something I'm currently aware of, so that's a point of clarification.
Okay, and that's a fair point of clarification. What Councillor Reid was referring to is him and Councillor Hulse had worked on a whole pile of notes, and that's where the agenda item came through, which is the item number 24, got added and got put into that. So it wasn't necessarily a whole pile of procedural stuff, it was more to do with putting it together so that the staff could put together a motion to make sure the intent was very much included within the amendment. Does that answer your question?
Sorry, Your Worship, I just started eating a sweet, I apologise.
That's okay.
Sort of, yes. But nevertheless, I would like to see the background information at some point come to council so that we can all be on the same page, all councillors, if that's possible, please.
Absolutely, I think that's totally fair. And
Could I answer that, Your Worship?
Actually,
just very briefly,
it's not a backwards and forwards, councillor, so I appreciate that. What I will just for clarification's purposes, are you happy to share that information after the council meeting?
Absolutely.
Thank you. That's all we really need to make sure of. Thank you very much for that. Councillor Olsen, you'd like to speak? Yep.
Yes, I would. Thank you, Your Worship. I would just firstly like to acknowledge the work that's gone into this proposal from Councillor Reid and Councillor Hulse. Well done. Look, in a perfect world, 5% would be preferable. That's ideal, but let's face it, at the end of the day, this will go to the vote and it will be put to rest. I would just like to ask exiting councillors that they don't abstain, that you're here to represent the ratepayers, and I just think you should fulfil those obligations to the end. 9.7 is what's being proposed, although it's not ideal, but it's what it is. And as I say, at the end of the day, it'll go to the vote. There's things in this this proposal that I'm not happy with. Debt, but as I say, it is what it is. let's get on and put it to the vote and see where we go from there. And thank you, everybody, for being united, or most of us being united on this. It's not an easy position to be in.
Thank you. Councillor Yovich.
Got some questions.
Yes?
Your Worship. In terms of this agenda item, why did we not take the opportunity to ask for an expense or a line-by-line review of our budget? That's my first question. And also, too, this talks about a procurement plan. Why did we not take the opportunity to discuss our procurement policy? Because that's where the efficiencies will be gained. And I'm just curious about why we haven't had taken the opportunity to include that, because they're essential parts. We've talked about mindsets in here in terms of changing the way we do it, but until we fundamentally change what we're doing, so my question, why are we not bringing in a review of our procurement policy?
Okay, so just to clarify the two questions that you've asked there, one is about procurement and the other one was about why we didn't do a line by line. Is that correct? Is those your two questions? Yep. Councillor Yovich, as the Finance Chair, you have that ability to request a line by line of all budgets, and you know full well of that, and I know that you're just asking the question of Council and why they haven't. That is part of the, we need to make sure of our governance versus management process. So as governors, we need to make sure the procedures are in place correctly so that the staff are able to follow them. When it comes to the line by line, if we start going down into detail of line by line, you start dealing with an situation where you start involving and getting involved in management procedures. What we should be doing as a council is providing good direction, good strong direction, with good procedures so that the staff can follow things correctly. Now, I'm well aware that there may be individual views around council around certain items. There is no argument about that. And that is where the elected members have that chance to actually communicate or question through the Finance Chair and also through the Finance team those particular items. In relation to procurement, we have asked for a procurement plan, and that is why item 20, if I read it clearly here, it says directs the staff to develop a procurement plan. This is clearly showing that we would like a new process so that it is able to be developed properly for Whangarei's situation. So your two questions are clearly itemised there and shown. Councillor Holst, do you have another question? No? Councillor Harding.
Sorry.
Councillor Holst, you had another question?
Councillor Yovich.
Sorry, Councillor Yovich, sorry. I was looking at you and saying Councillor Holst. My apologies.
That's right. It's got really confused.
Two different people.
Sorry, Councillor Harding. Just in terms of the terms of reference, the line-by-line items isn't actually in the terms of reference for the Finance Committee. Okay. So I do have a point of order on that.
No, that's a fair comment. We can definitely make sure that that is modified for next time round. That's a fair comment. Councillor Harding.
E mihi ana kia tātou katoa. E mihi ana kia koe te koromata for your words of prayer for us this morning. Look, just following up on the procurement, number 20. So is that procurement plan associated just to the King Street Hukarangi project or overall?
That particular, you're correct, Councillor Harding, that particular one is referring just directly straight to the King Street. However, I believe Councillor Reid and Councillor Holst were referring to a whole process as well and using that as a trialling process to make sure things are done.
Mihi ana.
Okay. Councillor Peters.
Thank you for those that have worked to get us to this point. I'd like to specifically endorse having the information as councillors earlier, which is what's being proposed in this, so that when we go to the long-term plan, we don't have this last-minute stuff. So, yeah, thank you. And also, I endorse Councillor Olsen's kōrero because it's never perfect. and we actually do need to prepare for not just the short term, but also the long term. Probably we're going to have difficulty doing that with this budget, but I know that the staff will work really hard to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peters. Councillor Holmes.
Your Worship, I'll speak briefly to this. So it's been a long and painful process to get to this point, and I think probably all councillors, I guess to some extent, regret that the process has taken so long and has been so painful. I want to thank the staff for the way they've embraced this and have listened to what we've said. I think that's reflected in what we've got in front of us. And now, I won't be standing for re-election, as is well known, and I'm mindful of the comments about exiting councillors not abstaining. I shall bear that in mind when we come to the vote. The point really I want to make is that one of the reasons we find ourselves in this position, and there's no doubt, 9.7 is better than 10.7, but clearly we'd all like it to be less. But one of the reasons we're in that situation, well, there are two main reasons. One is that we've been hit by many levies and charges by central government which are entirely out of our control, which get added on to the overall bill for ratepayers, and that's painful for all of us, councillors and ratepayers alike. And I think we must remember that we've been hit by charges which we have no control over at all. The second thing I'd say is that when this council first came together, first sworn in, so nearly 3 years ago, we agreed that we had to draw a line under years of deficit budgets, and we had to start to address that, and we had to live within our means. And I endorsed that then, I endorse that now. I think that is absolutely the right way to go as a financial strategy. What I would say with hindsight is that we maybe have been a bit ambitious in the number of years we thought it would take us to get to that point, and I would encourage the incoming council, as part of their planning, to look at that and whether, in fact, a little bit of borrowing for a little bit longer to ease the pain until we get to a balanced budget would be more palatable for everybody, but would get us to the same place in the end. So we've landed on a figure. It's the best we can do, I believe, in the current circumstances, for all the reasons my colleagues have mentioned already and I've highlighted. So I will be supporting the overall 9.7%. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Holmes. And you are 100% correct in relation to the levies. And I have some good news, and I just thought I'd share that right at this present moment. Our council, so I say the Northland councils, have been this morning awarded 250k specifically for local waters done well and the processes that we're going through. So you are 100% right. We have been forced with a lot of levies from central government in relation to that. However, they have come to the party for one part, which has just been released today. So, yeah, thank you for reminding me about that. Councillor Connor.
Thank you. Yeah, following on actually quite fittingly with Councillor Holmes there, I was starting with the fact that our ambition to get the overall everyday spending covered by year 4 was probably way too ambitious, but completely understanding that through a long-term plan that is the most controllable area that we have, pushing out to the year 10 provides guidance for other investment in the community, but little less control, especially considering with a new council coming in further down the track. In past consultations, or this one I can't remember exactly when it was, or comments, people have suggested having reserves in place, but we can't have reserves in place until we actually have an everyday covered to make sure that the maintenance can get dealt with efficiently when we have storms or whatever. I've heard in the past and watched these things come through, and I don't really... There's been comments about having a big project each term of council type thing, from various people or ways, and say we can only do one big thing. Personally, I don't think we even have to do one big thing. We really have to make sure that the nuts and bolts and the bits and pieces and the strategies and the day-to-day maintenance is on track. Following on from that big thing, in the past I've asked around how much it would cost to upgrade our roading infrastructure, footpath infrastructure, to make it totally disabled friendly. And I'm pretty sure it was around 10 times the budget it currently is. Disability friendly footpaths, accessible ways, enables every single person, every person. We keep hearing that we have places that people can't get through, the footpaths are blocked, people can't get around. I've seen a blind child trying to navigate some of our intersections to a shocking degree. Fortunately, he was with his father, but I've observed that, and we need improvement. Cutting costs will impede it further. And we also know, I can't remember the specific detail of what it is, but the amount of disability people that we have that with disabilities is it 30% or so? Roughly. Around 30% in our district, and yet we need to do a lot better for these things. We keep hearing it. It's one of the reasons the Disability Advisory Group hits us so hard, is because we need to do better. Following on from that, the environment, what we put out there, what we don't deal with, costs us and everybody else. We have weeds that are in our land that is unmaintained, that are now seeding, are flowing into other properties and whatnot, and then causing even worse problems for them, for us. We have pollution, we have sewage, we have rubbish that are going into our rivers and streams that we are trying to deal with, but at the same time, if we don't put more into it, it's just going to get worse. It's already bad enough as it is. I'm not going to go on too much further. It's not easy to say we need to put this percentage up. We need to acknowledge that if we don't do this, we're going to get the complaints coming back of the services we're not dealing with. There are people in our district that do want better services. It comes at a cost of putting the money into it. And heck, I would love to have a much better system of taking the rates, let's say a GST type of way, where people don't actually see the money going out. It's getting paid for automatically. We get that funding, I don't know how, but it doesn't come as this huge lump sum. Nobody really complains too much. You never see this from central government. There's complaints about tax, but you don't see that, oh my God, the rates are this high, when actually they're 9 times bigger than what we have actually to deal with. I'm just going to end it there. It's difficult to get this done, but we need to get this sorted. We look after our people.
Yeah. Thank you for your comments, Councillor. And I do want to acknowledge the GST one that you just highlighted on just there was actually raised up in Local Government New Zealand, and they have actually raised it with central government, and at this present moment central government have made it quite clear that they do not wish to go down that path. So it has been raised though, and thank you for raising it again. Appreciate that. Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I think I agree with a lot of comments, and what I have to say probably covers some of the territory that's already been covered, but you know, this council, the previous councils had been running years and years of deficit budgets, and this council chose to try and address that. So you have to give it credit for taking on the challenge. Now, so we committed to stop racking up debt to fund our day-to-day services by year 4 of the LTP. We asked staff to find efficiencies, and we accepted that because of the gap, that funding gap, and the rampant inflation at the time, that rates would need to increase, as they did across the country, an average of 15% last year. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. But council shouldn't be an immovable object. So this whole process has been about listening to our community, and listening to the pensioners who are struggling, and recognising that the economy is still in a dire place. You know, it was supposed to be better by now. To remember survive till 25. We're halfway through 25 and it's still, everyone's hurting, right? On stormwater, for the last 2 years, I've consistently pushed to consider how to reduce the impact of the stormwater charges that have been proposed to come through. In March, at the briefing, I asked for options for it to be phased in or that we use debt in the short term, and that was dismissed by the chair. Then on the 5th of June, the meeting collapsed. There was no adjournment, no clarity, no flexibility, and no plan. At the emergency meeting on the 10th, I again pushed for the stormwater to be reconsidered. And as a result of that, the stormwater rate has now been halved from $172 per unit to $79. And that actually represents about a 3% saving to residential ratepayers. So I feel quite good about that. It's also good to acknowledge that we're here because in the water space, the last council challenged 3 waters in order to continue to manage the waters ourselves. And we won that battle, but here we are, and these are the costs that are now being imposed on us that we must carry. So I think it's important to acknowledge that history and the decisions that have been made that have brought us to where we are today. Look, it isn't a perfect plan, but it's far more balanced than where we started off. We had some properties that were going to incur a 60% rate increase. And now, if you look through the agenda, you'll notice that for an average property, including the government-imposed charges, we're looking at a total of 10.2%. I think, that's not perfect, but it's a vast improvement. So I'll support this because I've done everything I can to reduce the impact and because our community needs a council that can function, not one that is just utter chaos.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. And I just think highlighting about the 3 waters and the stormwater, just to be a note that if the 3 waters was actually put in place, and this is a bit of a clarification that if the government had kept with its 3 waters, then the ratepayers would still be having to pick up the bill, and it would be we don't know what the final figures would have had to have been. So it is, at the end of the day, the ratepayers would still have to pick up that bill. So just to acknowledge that. Councillor Harding.
Well, thank you, Te Koromata. I'd just like to speak to the kaupapa. Thank you. I guess the impact for me was when Councillor Hull said out of all of his time, he felt that the submissions that came from the public were the harshest, they were the most critical, and I think that caused such an uncomfortableness, well certainly it did for me, around, holy heck, if I don't make it in the next round of elections, that's the period where you're going to wear it, where it was the most horrific and the most critical submissions that we've heard from our ratepayers. And then, so I'm really thankful of the time that it's taken for us to, for our elected members to work with our staff to get something that's a lot more palatable. Because when I go back and I look at what we were presented with on the 10th of June to what we've got today, it is way more tauterangi Māori, it's kind of more acceptable. And I think, for me, I was always thinking about the burden on the future generations around that excessive debt, and the revenue deficit, and we're going to pay for a whole heap of things today, and we're going to take that burden off the ratepayers, but we're going to land it on our future generations, and that's quite hard to, that's a bit of a battle. And I was looking after the moko yesterday, and they're 2 and 4, and thinking, wow, what's the impact going to be on them? But then I've got an 83-year-old mum owning her own house, pension, struggling. So yeah, it's a turmoil. But I feel like we're trying to set a balanced budget. yes, maybe that was a bit ambitious within that time period, but at least we did it, you know? You've got to start somewhere, because we said that was an important thing, we all agreed. And we've also got this increased uncertainty for the local government too, haven't we? Because we've got a government that's got a whole heap of legislative reforms. It's a moving feast. And what that does for the staff has got to be incredibly, burdening itself. So there's a whole heap of cogs in the wheels, and we know this, but I think that for me, as Councillor Reid was reading this out, there were more ticks than crosses, and it's clearly something that I will be able to support today. Mihi ana kia koutou.
Thank you, Councillor Harding. And thank you also for highlighting about the staff. I think that's a well worth point to highlight there, and the fact that the staff have actually worked really hard in doing this, and the rates, any rates increases that are happening are not just happening to those in the public, but also happening to the staff as well, as they're ratepayers as well. So they're working on those things as well. So thank you for highlighting that, and thank you for highlighting those points. Councillor Golightly.
Oh, thank you. Just writing my tiny little speech down. I still believe that we need to look harder at cost-saving measures. I appreciate and respect all the work, definitely all the work that our lovely people have done for us. I think we need to spend smarter, and like Councillor Jovic, there are still, I believe there are savings to be made before we ask this on our ratepayers. I will only agree to a 5% rates increase, so the fact we're taking this in parts is probably good, and I'd like to call a division, please.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Olsen, you got a question?
Yes, I do.
Yep.
So for us that have issues within this proposal, can we take it line by line? Because there's, although I agree with most of it, there are still things within this proposal that I'm not happy with.
Yeah,
So
and Councillor Olsen, that's what the team have actually done this time round, to actually break it down into parts where it can actually be taken in parts. This was heavily brought in and was acknowledged. Councillor Reid and Councillor Hulse have worked very tirelessly to make sure that the parts that can be taken in parts are quite clear. And that's why I did that clarification at the beginning. So I acknowledge your concern about wanting to take individual items. It's just as sections.
I mean, the part about debt and things like that, I think that needs...
Your point's been taken, though. Appreciate that. Councillor Hulse.
Thank you, Worship. Actually, I'd like to trend to the comments coming through today's meeting. So, first of all, I just want to thank particularly the 6 first-term councillors for actually leading on and recognise a bit of support when they adjourned the meeting last time we were here. So that meeting we had with the senior executive was a turning point to try and get this across the line. And what came out of that is some really good open discussion and a bit more understanding of the whole process. So the first 6 councillors, for those new term councillors, well done, and it's great that we actually could get in a room together and actually talk through the issue. Because our primary job, and I've always quoted it personally, is we're here to represent the ratepayers. That's our number one responsibility. And I think we've gone a long, long way to do it. Individually, we've all got concerns. I've made a stand right through this process. I wanted to stick around at 5%. But at the same time, that engendered really good debate and really good discussion. And that's what you get through this process. Some of the things we did not mention during the consultation was why we're trying to maintain a balanced budget. Credibility is everything. And at the moment, we're in a lot of doubtful scenarios. We've got local waters done well. We've got a starting point. We have no idea of the conclusion of that process. But we're working diligently to put our ratepayers first and to make sure we work through the whole process and come out the other side, the other end, with a really good model. But it's doubt. there's doubt there. There's a lot of other things. The other thing we didn't mention in our consultation was that this council just got established after a lot of natural disasters. Cyclone Gabriel came through. Well, first of all, we had to deal with the repercussions of COVID and our business sector being really under threat. And I feel for those business people who are under so much pressure and had to deal with that COVID alone. But then along came Cyclone Gabriel. And why I want to bring this up, it smashed our roads. And to all the people out there who want to stand for council and take our seats around this table, I just want to be really cautious to them quoting about sticking to the rate of inflation. Because just through Cyclone Gabriel, we were able to get real substantial support from the government, and we got subsidies up to 93% on some of our roads. That still left us with a 7% deficit, but what happened was our construction costs blew out big time on individual items. To get bridges done, increases of 48%, 50% were common. And everyone's quoting, council should stick to the inflation. We aren't in that world. We're in a different world when it comes to getting our costs and services. Out of Cyclone Gabriel also came a lot of flooding issues. We've addressed the Morningside flood since then. We've put in a scheme to protect those areas, but that comes at a cost as well. And then we've got picking up the costs of past councils. We have the good and the bad. The past council went out and committed ourselves, and we've now just about through the build of a lot of buildings that come to over $100 million, in excess of $100 million. The interest we're paying on those loans is now biting in. So we inherit the good and bad of previous councils, and it's up to us to make sure we try and leave council in a better state than when we took it over. We will not do that if we neglect going forward. So, as a seasoned member around the table, I just want to quote a few things that are actually in a public document but wasn't talked about last time, because I do not like comparing us with other councils. But in this case, I'm going to break my own rule, and I'm going to highlight one point. We've got a sector here, and I said we're now in the metro sector. And if you look across those metro councils, the cost of rates in Wellington, and we all know Wellington's got major water and wastewater problems. They're right next door to the government. They should have some high-profile councillors, and they should have a bit more influence than they do. Their rates are 80% higher than ours. 80%. So when we walk out the door here and look around our Whangarei district, and you see the amount of development that's happened and how well we've handled the development. We've got development levies in place, subsidising our workload. We've done a lot of work around financial management, but we must pay our way as we go as a council. A lot of councils have also subsidised their rate increases by debt and putting debt in it. That drops their rating, the Standard & Poor's rating. Therefore, they're paying higher interest rates on a higher amount of money. We have not done that. We've been financially prudent, and I'm extremely proud of being a councillor here, and over success in councils is actually fighting the issues as we go through, standing up for our ratepayers during this process, but allowing us for the final vote to all come together and support the motion so we can pay our staff, we can pay our contractors, but we can give signal to the business community and everyone else that actually we're on the right track. And just on that, our projected carry forwards last year, well, what we carried forward is around about $70 million. We actually forecast this year to halve that. So we've got 20 to 25 million more work out in our contractors. And that is our intent with doing what we did early on in this term. So some good things going forward. I think we've had a really good council meeting. We understand the process we're in now. And I just want to thank you, the Mayor, for allowing us to work behind the scenes and come back with a recommendation. I want to thank our CE for working with us. Thank you, Simon. And I think we need to go to the vote pretty soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holtz. Councillor McKenzie, have you got a question?
Yeah, just a quick question for the staff, Your Worship. The rate of increase that's been suggested by some of 5%, I just wondered, could staff quickly outline what the consequences of a 5% rate increase at this point in time would mean?
Yeah, I'm sure the team can do that. Simon, is that going to be your question to answer that one, or are you going to let the... There was, just to highlight, Councillor Mackenzie, I know there was a document that was sent out which did explain all that. However, you'd actually like the staff to actually make it very clear.
Please,
Yep.
We would certainly have to reconsult. It would be likely to be an amendment to the LTP, so there'd be a significant delay in being able to set the rates. That's likely to result in the rates not being put through in fraud tranches, which creates problems for people being able to pay for it, and ourselves not being able to strike the right rates until that process has gone through.
There'd also be other delays, though, wouldn't there?
Yep. Yep.
And what are those other delays that would happen?
Clearly there'll be an impact of the revenue dropping down. Interest would almost certainly have a credit rating downgrade, which would mean increased interest costs going forward. And the delay in setting rates while we work through the amendment process and an audit as well would mean that not only impacting our ability to set and receive rates, but NRCs as well.
So, and just a follow-up question. So based on all of those complications and consequences, would it be fair to say that it may actually disadvantage the ratepayer to opt for that chaotic route?
That's more of an opinion approach.
Well,
it depends.
it's a reduction of the increase on rates versus all of the costs that would come as a part of having to go through further consultation and so on.
Yeah. So just to clarify, when you're asking that question, the point that actually I think Simon has already highlighted it previously was the fact that we would be reducing the number of rate intakes, and therefore there would be larger amounts on those times. So yes, in some way it would actually be more detrimental. It's a bit hard to quantify it properly.
And more debt because of more interest.
Correct.
So on. Yeah, okay,
Correct.
thank you. Just wanted to clarify.
Sorry, it's a little hard to quantify
no, that's
perfectly.
Okay. I appreciate it. Thank you. I'll leave it there.
Yeah. Councillor Jovich.
Through the Chair, just in terms of the question to the CE though, in regards to that though, we're talking about revenue. There are other ways to actually negate some of that. I understand around the lead times, but a corresponding drop in expenses would still fulfil your obligations.
So so you're asking someone, would he still be able to fulfil his obligations if there was a reduce?
It would impact on levels of service, obviously, if less revenue.
Point of order, it may. It's not a will, it may. That would be my point of order.
Yep. Can you rephrase that, Simon, just to make sure you see?
In my opinion, it would. In my opinion, it would impact on levels of service. We would have to bridge that or increase debt. So we could potentially keep the same level of service, but we'd have to use debt to cover our costs. Or alternatively, we could stop doing some things.
Councillor Jovich, you got another question, or you're speaking to it?
Understanding orders, I'm pretty stumped actually. It's not a question. I thank you for the work that has gone into this. In terms of the line-by-line items, I do disagree with some of the, it does assist in terms of where we do tick things and we put crosses on here. Disagree with some of the comments in terms of what we have done and what we haven't done, but we'll get into that in different ways. I would like to have proposed amendments as to the rates in line with Councillor Golightly. However, I know that under the standing orders, I've got no show of getting that through. However, in light of that, in point 24, I would like to propose amendment that after September 25, that it shows including finalisation of a new procurement policy to deliver efficiencies.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Councillor, because you can't amend onto an amendment, so you actually have to have one amendment go through first, and then you can signal that you're going to do another amendment on top of that.
I'll signal that then.
Okay, thank you, councillor. Team, I just want to say thank you very much for being respectful for one another, and thank you all for being respectful to our team, our staff. They have worked tirelessly on this, and you've all highlighted that within your speeches, and I thank you all for that, especially for the fact that it's the time and the toll that it plays on the staff, just as much as the time and toll it plays on each one of us and the public. I think that you've been absolutely respectful in that, and I really appreciate the time and energy that all of you have put into that. Councillor Hulse, you've highlighted some important aspects that need to be highlighted there, absolutely important. We have set up things this time round to make less of a burden for the ratepayers going forward, and you are 100% correct. We've had some significant things that we've had to deal with, and between you and Councillor Reid, you've highlighted very clearly what those things are, and it's, you know, there is no way of you know, I had one ratepayer showed me the rates of what he pays in Wellington for a commercial property, and he said, "I'd much prefer to pay rates up here." So look, I'm well aware what you're saying, councillor, in relation to comparisons, and Whangarei is very different to Wellington. For one, we don't have earthquakes. On the other aspect of all the things that have been said, you know, we are all in the situation with the budgets. We need to make sure our budgets are tight and we are doing things affordably. And that is one thing I can read when I read through this amendment that Councillor Reid has put forward. It's clearly showing that the staff are working on things and the team are actually working to actively find better solutions to things. And they're suggesting of ways of doing that, which is great to see. I read the article this morning in the Advocate, which refers to the Powder Bay with the wastewater, and that's another cost which is going to be coming out of OPEX. So that's more construction costs which we have to pick up due to water infiltration within the wastewater lines. So there is a lot of things that we're having to pick up and go through. And councillors, I'm well aware that every one of you has listened to your ratepayers. Every one of you has taken on the comments being made. I have had phone calls late in the evening from ratepayers expressing their concern, some in tears explaining what they, where they're going forward. And so I'm well aware of the phone calls that each one of you had and the emails that each one of you had as well. So it is a situation that we're in where we are dealing with a legacy of issues along with substantial growth and also substantial reconfiguration of the council. And I appreciate the time and effort that our team have put into this, and again, that all of you have put into this as well. Councillors, I will put the motion. It will be done in parts, as Councillor Reid has highlighted. The first parts, just to make sure everyone's... Your division has been called, that is correct. Councillor Golightly has called division. So we'll take it first in parts. We'll do the first part first, which is the first part, which is 1 and 2. All those in favour, please raise your right hand.
Councillor Jovic, Councillor Ruka, Councillor Reid, Councillor Peters, Councillor Olsen, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Holmes, Councillor Harding, Councillor Hulse, Councillor Golightly, Councillor Connop, and His Worship the Mayor.
Those against? Okay. The next sections is from items 3 through to 9, which is the basis for setting rates. All those in favour, please raise your right hand.
Councillor Ruka, Councillor Reid, Councillor Peters, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Holmes, Councillor Harding, Councillor Hulse, Councillor Connop, and His Worship the Mayor.
Those against?
Councillor Jovic, Councillor Olsen, Councillor Golightly.
Thank you. That has been carried. We'll now move on to the next section, which is items 10 through to 17. All those in favour, please raise your right hand.
Councillor Reid, Councillor Peters, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Holmes, Councillor Harding, Councillor Hulse, Councillor Connop, His Worship the Mayor.
Those against?
Councillor Jovich, Councillor Ruka, Councillor Olsen, Councillor Golightly.
That's been carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll now move on to the next section, which is statements 18 through to 21. Please raise your right hand if you're in favour.
Councillor Jovich, Councillor Ruka, Councillor Reid, Councillor Peters, Councillor Olsen, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Holmes, Councillor Harding, Councillor Hulse, Councillor Golightly, Councillor Connop, and His Worship the Mayor.
Unanimous. We'll now move on to the next one, which is fees and charges, number 22. All those in favour, please raise your right hand.
Councillor Jovich, Councillor Ruka, Councillor Reid, Councillor Peters, Councillor Olsen, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Holmes, Councillor Harding, Councillor Hulse, Councillor Golightly, Councillor Connop, and His Worship the Mayor.
Those against? And the last two items, which is items 23 and 24. All those in favour, please raise your right hand.
Councillor Ruka, Councillor Reid, Councillor Reid, Councillor Peters, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Holmes, Councillor Harding, Councillor Hulse, Councillor Connop, and His Worship the Mayor.
Those against?
Councillor Jovich, Councillor Olsen, Councillor Golightly.
That's been carried. Councillors, that now becomes the substantial motion, and there has been signalled an impossible amendment. I'm just checking if you can have a seconder. Yes, it looks like you might still be able to have a seconder. What was your amendment that you'd like to move?
24 was to add in...
Please use the microphone.
Sorry, I did. I was just trying to, I was just suggesting including finalisation of a new procurement policy.
So would that be a new part, so maybe 25?
Well, we're talking about efficiencies, gains and values, and we've heard some comments from councillors on this, and you know, nothing's changed.
Okay, so I'm just trying to make sure we get your amendment there, so we get the wording for that.
Insanity. So, you know, nothing's changing.
Appreciate that, councillor. Before we can speak to it, I need to make sure that we can get your wording for your amendment. Councillor Jovich, so we've got here, you've got direct staff to develop an action plan for improving and simplifying the 2026-27 annual planning process, and to focus on efficiencies, gains and value for money to reduce the cost burden for the ratepayers.
Suggest that direct staff to develop an action plan and procurement policy for improving.
Action plan. You've got the wording there. Apologies, councillor, I just want to make sure we got this actually correct, okay?
Just after action, review of staff 24, direct staff to develop an action plan and procurement policy.
I think he's wanting it up here. Improving and simplifying in that area.
Sorry, yeah, Your Worship, whether what my last bit there kind of, I know you're trying to deal with the annual planning process, and the procurement plan actually deals with bigger picture. So
okay, so so just to make sure we've got so it's going to come up on the screen there. So we just had to work out where you're wanting the words, because it makes a difference where the words actually go in the sentence.
That was my last comment on that. I think it needs to, the need is, we've been talking about needing such a
So just to make sure before you start speaking to it, is that how you're wanting it?
Having thought on the matter, I'd probably not, because the procurement policy is more encompassing of everything. It's not just the annual planning process. So it probably, you may be correct on this instance, that it might be a 25.
25, okay.
If you'd like that.
So the wording that you'd use for that. Can you just work with Danielle to make sure you get the wording for that? No,
Finalise
you've spoken.
a procurement policy and report back to council in September 2025. And procurement policy to focus on efficiencies. Focus on efficiencies and
So Danielle's got the motion there. I just need to, the amendment, should I say, just to make sure we can.
Your Worship, I know a couple of our esteemed councillors have actually been working on this for a long time. So I've just put there focus on efficiencies, encouraging development. So if someone wants to give some direction on that one, just because it's not just efficiencies, it's about how we can do things and grow the region, the districts. So
What we'll do there is, do you mind if I just get Simon?
It's general enough.
Yep.
Totally.
Yeah, Simon, you have any? Okay. Yep. It's not conflicting with anything. It's looking good. So well done. Councillor Golightly, are you seconding that? Oh, sorry. I just need to make sure of that. Yes, you can second that. Sorry, we had to double check there. Councillor Jovic, would you like to speak to it, or you've?
Oh, yes, I will speak to it. Just following on from some of the discussions that we've had in our term in here with 3 years, until we get some change, we are not going to be able to progress the district. And I think it's essential that our procurement policy is looked at and gives some direction. And, elected members will give some, this will allow elected members give some direction to future councils. And with a bit of, a steer on where we need to go. Learnt a lot and in our 3 years, and, we've totally got some of it wrong, and it's probably taken too long for some of the stuff, the nuances of being in council. So hopefully this is something that has been around for a very long time, and this kind of, the whole idea is to actually give some direction and actually have things finalised.
1 second, Councillor. Thank you very much for that.
Sorry, Your Worship. Yep. I know we have a procurement policy. So is it, do we staff to review the procurement policy? Because we can't finalise what we've already got.
Yep. So we're just going to go to Simon here. As I said, I want to make sure we get this right. So, Simon.
We're currently doing an internal audit of Council's procurement policy and the manual. So that's currently in progress. This will ensure that Council's procurement framework remains compliant with what local government needs to be compliant with, effective and aligned with best practice, and in particular that provided by the government. The findings from the review will inform the revision of the existing policy, which is already in draft form but may undergo preliminary amendments based on the audit's recommendations before being submitted to elected members and for their input. And I'm just wondering if we've got a date for that.
Through the Chair, this was tabled through the Risk and Audit Committee. That audit's underway as we speak by BDO. They'll be back within the next month.
Okay, so just going to go back to...
The review's already underway.
Yep, okay, I'm just going to go back to Councillor Jovich. You said you possibly changed the word from finalise to review, is that correct?
Given our CE's comments and it's underway, do we direct staff to finalise a review of the procurement policy?
Okay, so, yep, so finalise a review. Now, you've moved that, Councillor Golightly, are you happy to second that? Because you've seconded it before, okay.
Could I suggest we change into by? That allows us to do it earlier.
Into,
In September, by September.
By September. Are you, Councillor Jovich, are you happy with that?
Best thing I've heard in 3 years. Thank you.
Councillor Golightly, are you happy with that?
That's what we want to hear, how we can do it.
Excellent, right, okay, so we've got amendment with it. Thank you very much for going with the patience of getting that there, thank you. Councillor Golightly's called for addition provision, but before we go that price, I've got Councillor Olsen.
Yes, I've got a question, Your Worship. Under standing orders, councillors are not allowed to email one another during a meeting, is that correct? You've told me we can't message or email one another during a meeting. So my question is, how is it that senior staff are allowed to message one another during a meeting?
They're not elected members for one, you may turn around and go, okay, there's two standards. Here you have a situation where you've got a staff member down there who's actually got the information. You've got Simon Weston up here who's a CE, and he needs to be able to communicate with his team regularly to find out if there's an answer. Now, while I was dealing with the amendment and getting the amendment right, Alan was waving his hands at there, and I didn't even see that. So it was basically because Alan was actually able to answer that question. And unfortunately, because I was focusing on the amendment and getting the amendment right, I would have gone typically to Alan to get the answer for that one. Okay, Councillor Connor.
I don't have an issue with it at all and support looking at it because after discussions we've already had about the fact that there's groups that are able to do things cheaper and they're already a part of it, blah, 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 blah. Great. My question is, as it's already underway, is it necessary to have this one up as it's already underway?
Okay. And that is a good question. The question's more relating to the processes and procedures, and if I get what Councillor Jovich is with his intention of bringing this motion forward, is so that it actually is highlighted, as this is one of the ways that Council is looking at to changing its processes. So it's actually, rather than just dictating and saying, it's actually giving a clear indication both to the public and to each other of the intention, so it's quite clear on that respect. So that's why I was quite happy to make sure it was included in there. You don't have to explain anymore.
No, I had a question on that. If there's concerns around that, with my hat being the finance chair, I am happy to bring that as a notice of motion through the finance agenda next week, and as a direction from that committee, because that is the terms of reference in terms of the procurement policy. So the question is that if it's felt that it's not appropriate here, I will signal to the public, and I'm happy, it's not an issue, I will signal to the public that it will come forward in next week's finance. I will move it as a separate motion in the agenda.
Point being had, look, I appreciate what your offer that you're making there. I do need to make it very clear. I had no issue with that particular motion, the amendment, with the way it was worded, because it's quite clear and it's referring to the annual plan processes and what we're going through. So I clearly, it doesn't bring in conflict, so I have no problem with bringing it forward. Councillor Hulse.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I want to support my fellow councillor and Chair of Finance. We've been looking at this for some time, and in the wider aspects of procurement, it goes right across all council. It's a huge bit of work, but once again, I'll say get the scope right before you go. I'm a bit alarmed we're actually working on it without getting the council's elected members' input at the start, because our direction is quite different from what I think BDO now got given them. So we need to sort that out real quick. Thank you.
Fair comment. Thank you, Councillor. No, Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Your Worship. That, to a degree, was already in our line of sight with number 24, the background behind 24, and Councillor Hulse and I will be very, very happy to share a briefing space with the rest of the council around this. Thank you.
Understand. Thank you very much, Councillor Reid. Okay, so we're going to now move, we've got a division's been called. All those in favour, please raise your right hand. Just to make sure very clear, this is on the amendment of number 25.
Councillor Jovic, Councillor Ruka, Councillor...
Unanimous.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's unanimous.
Yep. Thank you, councillors. No, all unanimous? Yes, I can't say the word properly, I know that. So that's become part of the substantial motion. Councillors, now we are going to vote on the substantial motion. As we have taken the original amendment in parts, we now will take this as one whole. All those in favour? No division has been called by Councillor Connop. All those in favour, please raise your right hand.
Councillor Reid, Councillor Peters, Councillor Olsen, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Holmes, Councillor Harding, Councillor Hulse, Councillor Connop, His Worship the Mayor.
Those against?
Councillor Jovic, Councillor Ruka, Councillor Golightly.
That's been carried. Thank you, councillors, for your time, your energy today. That is the only agenda item on our agenda. So we will close in a word of prayer. As I said, if you'd like to bow your heads, you're more than welcome to. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you again, Lord, for the discussions that we've had, the healthy discussions that we've had, and thank you, Lord, for allowing us to have our community as the number one focus. Lord, as this is a time for Matariki where we remember the things that have happened, we celebrate the things that have where we've been and the hope for the future. Lord, may you look after each one of the elected members and the members of the public, wherever they are in their lives, and may you protect them and guide them for the enduring future. In your most precious and loving name, amen. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, members of the public. Thank you, team, for being and taking your time to be here, and thank you for being patient with us as we go through.